I'm glad that I get to speak after a Nobel Prize winner. I feel this is a great opportunity to practice what I teach with baseball players all over the world. First and foremost, excited. This is my second time in Boston, even though I have worked for the Red Sox for the last 2 years. This is my second time here. I have never been in Fenway. So that's an interesting fact about me. I don't know how much you guys know about MLB and what the challenges are for players as they come up the minor leagues to the major leagues, how the draft or international signing works. I'm not going to try to explain it a lot. I'm just going to try to connect it with the experience of our Latin players. The fact that I speak with an accent is because I'm from Colombia, not Colombia. And that's a beautiful country in South America. And I've been fortunate enough to be in the United States since 2001, and I've been able to raise a family here. I have 2 kids, Santiago and Sofia. Santiago is 2, Sofia is 4 months. So I'm gonna miss them today, but I'm away and I'm gonna be able to sleep very well tonight. No more jokes. So what do I do? And I think a lot of you see the show that our major leaguers come here 162 times a year, which is the regular season, and you see it and you are impressed and you see their contracts. You see that Ohtani signed for $1 trillion and Boston is not expanding. Trust me, this is going to be a heck of a good team. With that being said, a lot of what we do is at the ground level, especially the job that I get to do. I get to work with kids that are 16, 17 years old in Latin America. My expertise are on transitions. So when they turn from amateur to professional in Dominican Republic, then when they come from Dominican Republic to the US, big transitions, challenging transition, and the mental side is important. Not only that, the social support that they have is as important. And we try to make it easy for them, but at the same time, we want to make it hard, because if you make it too easy and we can make practice and training very easy, they won't be able to get here to Boston. So the stats, the numbers are very clear. 3% of the players that we sign internationally make it to the major leagues, around 10% from the draft. Those numbers are very small. And we spend as an industry hundreds of millions of dollars every year. So if you look into the research, how many of you are counseling? How many of you have a degree in mental health? My people, I have a master's degree in mental health. Which one is the #1 variable that supports improvement in mental health? Excellent. What about going through therapy? What is the #1 variable? Close. Relationships. If you don't build rapport with we call it therapeutical alliance, if we don't build that, it's hard to do it. So 99% of my job is to build those relationships. I speak 2 languages, so I can cover a lot of people. And it's super fun getting to know their stories. Integration of mental performance skills. I don't know how many of you are international from different countries. Raise your hand. Somebody from Latin America? Perfect. Psychology is seen as a taboo. You don't talk to psychologists. Like, you have to be crazy to talk to a psychologist. So keep that in mind. That's a lot of the challenges that we have to deal. And most importantly, I think we coach the coaches. How we help them is we magnify the impact. We educate our coaches. A lot of these coaches were former players. They haven't come to BU and get a degree, or Harvard or MIT, but they're very good, knowledgeable people. So we just educate the coaches, we have a higher impact. I think if you get something out of my session today is to see the journey of major league players. It's pretty hard to become one, as I mentioned before. And there are 4 areas of development: the mental, the physical, the tactical, and the technical. You get to see all of that in display every day. And as I was saying, around $210 million are invested every year to sign in free agents. You see, if you are familiar with the news of Boston Red Sox, we just signed Bello for an extension. He's gonna be our starting pitcher for the first game. He's gonna go against Luis Castillo, two Dominican players. Bello signed for $35,000. Luis Castillo signed for $60K. So money does not guarantee that you're gonna make it to the major leagues. There are players who have invested teams a lot of money and they don't make it. It's a lot of luck, like our Nobel Prize winner was talking about. Then they go to the Dominican Republic. They have to learn. They need to become professional. These are 17. I don't know what you were doing when you were 17. I was not as disciplined as these kids. Our previous speaker talked about practice, 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 trust the process, no shortcuts. This is where they develop those expertise. I'm very fortunate. I get to work with the best of the best. And then we just try to make it a little bit better. And then the transition to Arizona or Florida. And then there are 5 levels in the minor leagues. They come up. And finally, you are able to stay in the major league. Anybody knows, since baseball has been for 120 years, how many major leaguers have played the sport? In 120 years, how many major leaguers? Nobody? Not a guess? 2,000, that's too little. 20,000 players, 20,500 players. That's very little. That's just unreal of seeing how many kids are playing out here or in the Dominican Republic. I get to travel to the Dominican Republic twice a month, where you guys go for vacations, I go to work, and you get to see the kids over there just playing. So it's very good. What are the challenges? Support system, emotional management, education barriers. A lot of these kids never finish middle school. So learning in an environment for them is not suitable. Is not, we don't even try it. Their attention span is probably 20 minutes tops. And I had to be as entertaining as our previous speaker, that was here. Nutritional, a lot of them very, very thin. And they don't have the resources to eat all the meals that we provide here in the United States. A lot of sexual education. You saw with Wander Franco. That cost him a lot of money. And the rules in Dominican Republic do not apply here. So that's a lot of life skills. The law in the United States, and you always hear about that baseball player that, got into an accident or was driving without a license. Financial education. Imagine you being 16 years old and getting $1 million. That's a lot of money. And then then they start having aunts and uncles, tios and tias and cousins, and they want some of that money. How do you handle that? I had a player, I used to work with Cleveland and Cincinnati, one player in one of those teams. He made $3 million for his signing bonus. In 2019, he had the pandemic. His dad took care of that money. Out of the pandemic, his dad only had $60,000 left. How can you motivate this kid? How can you give a drive for this kid to continue performing? It's challenging. So they are facing a lot of challenges that our kids, normal kids, don't happen. Early success as a distraction, right? Some of you who are in sports psychology, early specialization, this is an issue. These are 16-year-old kids that are very good. And then they need to keep it up until they are 24, 25 to make it to the major leagues. So limited support system. You were talking about support system, different language, different everything. I don't think anybody recognized a person in that picture. How many of you know Ken Revisa? Ken Revisa, that was in his time with the Cubs. I wouldn't have a job without him. And I think something that we learned from him, and it was very sad when he passed away a few years ago. The way we think is very important, and there are strategies. We talk about I follow ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. How many of you know acceptance and commitment therapy? A lot of BU is based on that, right? So value driven, how your daily actions align with your values, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, self-awareness. That's huge. When you are 16 and everybody tells you that you are the best invention since Coca-Cola, you're gonna believe it. So how do we teach these kids to be accurate self-evaluators? Improve our ability to get to the moment, be in the moment and return to the moment. We just have a whole session about how we use the breath and mindfulness to do so. So I think that's something that is very basic. Right now we're in spring training in Fort Myers. Every morning at 7:30, we have a mindfulness session. It's open for coaches and players. And we go from scripts all the way to just listen to music. And we use different anchors to ground us to the present moment. Controlling the controllables, we talked about this before, so I won't expand. Grow our tolerance for disruptions. We're going to fail a lot. So in baseball, and this is something that you guys have heard a lot, if you hit 300, that's pretty good. That's 3 out of 10. And you're going to fail 7 times. So how do we learn that tolerance to failure? And identify outcomes, but prioritize the process. Our Nobel Prize winner just said that. So take it as it comes. And seek to create clarity in our role. There are people who get signed and they spend a lot of money and they think they're going to be the main people, the superstar of the team. And then as time passes, they're not as good and they go to the bench. How do you do that? How do you transition? And your ability to connect, to learn from others. These kids are super talented physically. My opinion that is not based in research, it's just based on actual experience. Those who are very good at learning are going to become very good at their craft. And there is a point where your ability, your talent, your skill set is going to be limiting factor versus your ability to learn and grow. So this is something that we constantly talk about under growth mindset. Carol Dweck mindset book. You haven't read it, highly recommend it. So basically, we take a very holistic approach. We believe and we strongly are rooted to what you came from and your strengths. We believe in your history. We believe in your ability, in your experiences, and how that affects the way you perform. I don't know if you noticed, but Latin players are very flashy, right? You see them with different colors. You see them doing a lot of things, flipping the bat. Guess what? That's how we played in Latin America. Then we come to the United States. And for many years, we said, no, that's not the culture of baseball. Now we're embracing it. The Acuñas of the world, the Eli de la Cruz of the world, the Machados of the world, we come from there. We play the game this way. We train this way. This is what it means, having meaning and purpose. That was said before me in the previous talk. So great believer of how your thoughts, emotions, and feelings affect your performance. Great believer that if we create systems in place, we're able to overcome adversities in an effective way. And I think mastery is such a hard process. I don't know when was the last thing that you did something hard. These kids that I get to work daily, they are tested. And with technology now, we have different modalities. And with motor control science and learning, we make practice harder. So it's super cool to see. I started in baseball back in 2015 until now, and seeing the incorporations of different technology and how we can use that technology to make practice harder. When I remember when I started in baseball, they used to do tee work. You put a ball into a tee and you hit it. That's not like competition. These kids are facing 100 miles fastballs with movement. The ball is not static. So that mastery component is super important. And yeah, I think that's where I want to stop it. If you haven't done something challenging or hard today, try to do it tomorrow. Whether that's 20 minutes of mindfulness, whether that's connecting to your values, whether that is connecting to others. But I want to take a second just to show my appreciation to all of you for being here and for everybody that organized this conference. I was there with Edson 12 years ago, creating a conference, bringing people in the field, and now I'm at the other side. And it's so exciting to see all of your faces and see the people that go to Fenway to see the Red Sox have an amazing season this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Dr. Jennifer Bill is next.
Oh, there it is. Thank you, everybody. So let's take a left turn and talk about music. I teach at the College of Fine Arts at Boston University, just over that way, about a mile. And so I always consider myself versatile in what I do. So I am a saxophonist, conductor, and educator. At BU, I teach private lessons, which means one-on-one with students, chamber music, which is small groups, and then a few courses, including building your professional presence for musicians and digital and multimedia expression for musicians, which is a hub course if anyone needs it. That's an undergrad. Okay. And I also conduct the all-campus concert band, which is open to the entire BU community. Okay, just in case. And then in the summers, I go out to Tanglewood in the Berkshires and I work for the BU Tanglewood Institute, which is targeted towards high school students. So professionally, I consider myself a collaborator and an educator. So collaboration is basically just another word for teamwork, okay? So collaboration is really the cornerstone of my performing career. So a few groups that I am currently part of include Brush Read, which is live painting, and then I play saxophone. The Ferris Quartet, which is saxophone quartet, 4 of us, and the Bind Ensemble, which is saxophone, viola, and piano. These groups and my conducting the concert band all rely on individual expertise combined with creative teamwork. We'll talk about that more, but each individual in these groups attends rehearsals, practice, and performances, prepared and ready to create an interwoven musical experience for the audience. So my work is all about bringing music to the audience, and the art form is the emotional response of the audience, whether it's happy or sad or good or bad. Now, I'm very lucky because I've always excelled in team activities, including when I was younger. I grew up in Minnesota. I played ice hockey, as everyone in Minnesota does. And then I ended up east because I was recruited to play for Providence College. Oh, I went the wrong way. Anyway, so I did play 4 years at Providence College as the captain of the ice hockey team. As an educator, I simply want my students to succeed in life as artists, but also as humans. That's the main thing. So I really consider myself a mentor to them, and I do tell them that I am your teacher and your mentor for as long as you want me. So I still am writing recommendation letters for people that I taught 20 years ago. So, all right. So who is an excellent musician? When you think of someone that is an excellent musician, who do you think about? Do you think about some person in a tux playing in the concert hall? Or do you think about the sound engineer who was helping the next pop star sing in tune? Are you thinking about a songwriter who may be trying out their new song at the local coffee house, an open mic night? All of those are valid. So, all at the same time, can everyone just not yell, but say out loud who you think an excellent musician is? Ready? Go. Beyonce, I heard. Good. So when I think of musicians, hey, I think of kind of in 3 categories. So performers, composers, who are the people that are writing the music, and then producers. Producers are the behind the scenes people that are making all the performers sound good. So these are just a few people. There are many great musicians out there, of course, but first that came to mind for me, Beyonce. Okay, the Queen Bee, of course. Classically, this is Hilary Hahn. She is a world-renowned violinist, and recently actually has been sharing her practice routine on Instagram. It is excellent, and so check it out. It's called 100 Days of Practice. So, and some days her practice is taking a nap, because sometimes you just got to do that. So it's really great. For some composers, this is Gabriella Lena Frank, who is starting to become more well-known for classical music, and her music reflects not only on her personal experience as a multiracial Latina, but also refract her studies of Latin American cultures, incorporating poetry, mythology, and native musical styles into her classical framework. Then, of course, the greatest, Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton, of course, a country music legend, but does anyone know how many songs she's written so far? Not millions. She sold millions of records, but over 3,000 so far. Okay, over 3,000. So she is a true composer in my mind. And then for producers, some great producers. This is Nova Wave, the duo. So this is Denisha Andrews and Brittany Coney. They have produced and written songs for Beyonce, for Rihanna, Nicki Minaj, Britney Spears, Ariana Grande, etc. Lots and lots and lots of people. So if you are unfamiliar with any of these musicians, just ask Google, stuff will pop up, and take a listen. Take a listen to them, especially the Nova Wave, and their production style is really fantastic. And this is the sound that we are hearing all the time on Spotify and on the radio, if you still listen to the radio in the car. Okay. All right, so some common attributes for excellence in the music field. So musicians that are considered experts, no matter what their specific musical skill is, with singing or playing an instrument, composing, conducting, or the behind the scenes mixing or mastering, they all have certain attributes that set them apart, no matter what field or musical field they're in. First, all are going to be performing their fundamental skills at the highest level. Okay. Fundamental skills for a performer, saxophone for me, is literally just being able to play beautifully every single time I am in front of an audience or in the practice room by myself. Okay. All have a determined and purposeful attention to detail and what they are doing. All will possess creativity that can be flexible with different professional situations, whether you're playing by yourself or with an orchestra of 110 people. All have a curiosity about music, art, and the human experience, because that is what we are trying to share. And then all want to have a connection with their audience. That is our art form. We want to connect with the audience. So how does someone actually become an expert musician? There are many routes, for sure. But I wanted to talk first about the two myths, especially nowadays, about or misconceptions about the only pathways to becoming a musician. Okay, the first option, let's call it the child prodigy, right? So, and this, by the way, is one very famous musician's path. So if you can guess at the end, we'll say. So first, you start your instrument when you're 4. Okay, got to start. If you're past 4, it's too late. Okay, then you make your first public performance at age 5. Then you perform for the President of the United States by age 7. Okay, then you make your TV debut by age 8. Don't forget, you still have to go to school. So you graduate high school at 15. And then to make things different, you decide to go to an Ivy League and not major in music. Okay. So any non-music degree and graduate by the time you're 19. And then of course you go on to a renowned international career. Any guesses? Yeah, Yo-Yo Ma, good job. So he played for President Eisenhower and JFK by the time he was 7. Okay. So the second option, which is a myth, is when we start with a normal childhood, we'll say. So in middle school, you join the choir. Okay, then in high school, you keep singing because that's your extracurricular activity, but you also start to take private voice lessons and perform in musicals. Towards the end of high school, you start to write your own songs, so you decide to record a demo. You decide to not go to college, even though you have been accepted into 3 music schools, including Berklee College of Music, because you're obviously going to make it if you just move to LA with your demo, okay? So you move to LA so that you can get signed by a major record company, but when you're 19. Then you move home when you're 20 because you're out of money, and you did not get signed, okay? But when you are home, your friends talk you into auditioning for this new reality TV show. So when you're 20, you win American Idol. Yeah, I hear it already, okay? And then, of course, you go on to sell millions of albums and win multiple Grammys. Guesses? Kelly Clarkson. Kelly Clarkson. So her friends actually talked her into auditioning for American Idol. Fun fact, the other fun fact is she did not want to join the school choir, but the choir teacher in middle school heard her singing in the hallway and convinced her to come join. So, okay, so some pathways, some actual pathways for us normal people. Okay, so if you're not a child prodigy and you don't win American Idol or the X Factor or The Voice, here are some kind of normal pathways. All pathways, no matter which route you decide to take, it's all about education, okay? So I'm gonna go on a small rant in a moment, so I apologize now, about music education. So no matter who we are, the pathway to becoming a musician involves education at every level of our career, okay? And to give this opportunity to all children, we must have education in the public schools, okay? Exposure to and education in the arts allows young people to envision a pathway for themselves. That's really important. So here's my quick rant. You guys can, if you don't want to listen, this is of some reason, some quotes from Plato and Yo-Yo Ma, but music education in elementary, middle, and high school has been proven to increase brain power and functionality, resulting in a boosted IQ and improved concentration. The positive attributes learned through music making, such as confidence, independence, perseverance, leadership, and personal responsibility, really prepare youth for lifelong success. Studying music nurtures creativity, builds empathy, and helps people better express their emotions and manage anxiety. And finally, research shows that music students are more active in their school community and exhibit enhanced relationship building and teamwork skills. End of rant. Thank you. So music in the public schools is really, really important. Okay, so as people move out of K through 12, there are many different directions that they can go to become an excellent musician. So I personally would suggest go to college, go to university, go to a music school if you choose so, okay? So no matter, I should say, but a lot of musicians, especially jazz musicians in the past, have just gone into the field and done it. Okay, so again, this is kind of why I say choose your adventure, how you want to go towards your end goal of being a great musician. But no matter whether a person chooses to go to school or not, education is still the most important way for students to develop. So whether you're in school or not, young musicians should seek out and learn from the best teachers and the best performers, okay? They should not be afraid to ask questions. especially to experts in their field or on their instrument. And if a young person is going to succeed in music, they must have the drive to want to learn. Sound familiar? You have to have that drive to want to learn and to always want to learn. Now, if you are lucky enough to become a professional and actually make money, being a professional does not necessarily mean that you're making money. You are going to end up being a lifelong learner. And as a musician and educator myself, I'm always listening and learning from my peers in the industry, whether it's other saxophone players or conductors or cello players. I've met Yo-Yo Ma. He's super nice and very open to answering questions. So if you ever happen to run into him, because he lives in Massachusetts, he's here all the time. So most expert musicians feel that they are lifelong learners. Even Yo-Yo Ma will say that. They want to continue to make relevant art for the audiences of today. And the best way to continue to thrive as a professional musician is to stay curious. Do not be content with what you already know. Continue to admit that you do not know everything. And as an educator, that's also really important to admit to your students, plus to yourselves. And then finally, learn from your colleagues. Take the positive aspects of their performance, of their expertise, and then apply it to your own musicianship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I agree, Beyoncé is an expert. Next, we have Dr. Joshua Goodman.
Yeah, so I have the unenviable task of following a Nobel Prize winner, and then someone who works for the Red Sox, and then someone who makes the BU band and music community function. And I'm going to tell you about spreadsheets. No, but I'm going to argue that spreadsheets are really interesting. So I do education policy research with impact. And I do a lot of it through the BU Wheelock Education Policy Center. So let me tell you a little bit about what I do. My title is that I'm a professor of education. Well, I'm associate professor, I should say, of education and of economics. I'm in 2 departments here at BU. And I see my primary identity as someone who does research on the impacts of education policy choices. So I think of myself as a researcher primarily. But if I think about the way that I actually spend my hours of the day, I'm also a teacher. I'm a mentor. I'm a source to journalists. I'm a writer. I'm a tweeter. And I've been a government advisor. And I was thinking as I put this list of roles together, trying to figure out, I think there's a theme here. And so what's the theme? I think the theme is that what I'm fundamentally trying to do is create and communicate evidence and ideas about education policy. And I'm thinking about creation and communication as 2 halves of my role for a very specific reason in this context, which is the creation part is the substance. My goal is to create new evidence, new facts to drive conversations. And I think of that as the primary focus of the training I received as a PhD student, for example, and the primary focus of the training we give many of our master's and PhD students. It's the primary focus of that training. It underpins everything else that I do. But then there's this other piece, which is communication, which I think of as the style, not the substance. And the more I think about it, the more I think we underemphasize this in our training, because you need the substance in order to have impact. But if you can't communicate it effectively, it turns out it sort of just dies there. And I actually think Josh Angrist was a great example of someone who is, is a Nobel Prize winning economist, a brilliant statistician and econometrician. And yet you see how much love and care he puts into communicating those ideas. Little side note, I took my first econometrics class from Josh Angrist. So everything I do, the tools of my research, I actually first learned from him. So it was really sort of touching to be here with him as the first speaker. And so I want to talk about 3 things I think are key to sort of achieving excellence in my field. In other words, how to successfully do research with impact. And so I've got 3 buckets. The first, and I was glad to see you talk about, the first thing you have to do is have fundamental skills, right? And so I think investing in these core skills is a really important thing that sort of comes first. So in my world, if I think about identifying what those core skills are, I think of it as math and statistics training. I think of it as coding, computer programming. I also think of it as writing and speaking. Again, 2 of the pieces I think of our training that we underemphasize. I'm not the first person up here to say practice, practice, practice. In fact, I think I maybe have heard it from all the speakers before me. But the reason I put it up here is not because it's true, and you'll notice I have a picture of a musician down there because music is the perfect example of something where everyone understands, well, if you just practice your instrument, you get better at it. I don't think we always have the same attitude about math and statistics and coding and reading and speaking. And so a lot of my goal as a mentor in the sort of PhD and master's program that I help run is to provide the opportunities for people to practice those skills, whether in the context of a classroom or in other contexts. And important to that is getting feedback from mentors and peers. And so it's, part of the practice process is having someone there to tell you, did you do it right? And if not, what could you be doing better? And so I think not being shy about getting that feedback and making sure that the system you're part of sets up the opportunities for that feedback is pretty key to improving those core skills. Related to getting that feedback is a key piece of being successful in my world is being social. So, I joke that maybe I spend all my day with spreadsheets. I spend large chunks of my days with spreadsheets. But to actually be successful in this world of research, it's not a socially isolating process. If you are socially isolated as a researcher, something has gone wrong. I'll talk about how you need periods of social isolation, but it shouldn't be all the time. Talk to everyone, whether that's in person, if you're comfortable doing that, knocking on people's doors, sending them emails, DMing them on social media. It doesn't really matter how you talk to them. I've made a ton of friends through Twitter, people that I learn a ton from. But the more conversations you have, the more you quickly find your way in whatever idea space you're working through. And particularly if you manage to find ways of talking to people who know things you don't, right? I once heard a professor say that the key to coming up with a brilliant idea as a graduate student is you take your first bad idea and you go to Professor A and you say, Professor A, here is my bad idea. You don't say, here's my bad idea, just to be clear. And Professor A says, that's okay, but what I would do is I would tweak it in the following way. And then you take that newly tweaked idea and you go to Professor B and you say, Professor B, here's my idea. And they say, well, I would tweak it this way. And you just bounce back and forth between those professors, passing the ideas off until you have a brilliant idea at the end, right? I don't know if I recommend that, but it's not crazy. The other thing about being social, because you can learn things that you don't from people around you, being comfortable with self-promotion is really important. When I started my career, I assumed if you do good work, people will find it. No, that's not true. You can do the best work in the world, but if it sits just on your hard drive or it gets published in an obscure academic journal, that's not going to do the world any good. You have to be proactively out there telling people, not necessarily bragging about it, but just informing them that you've done something that you think is worth paying attention to. You may be wrong. It might be that everyone ignores you because it turns out other people are not as interested in whatever it is you have to offer as you thought they would be. I've had plenty of projects like that. But if you want your project to have impact, you have to put it and by extension yourself out into the world. And so as Edson said, like I have found, again, social media to be a remarkably effective way of directly communicating with a larger group of people than I will get from this forum, from my classes, from the academic journals I publish in. And so being comfortable with that really maximizes your impact. The last thing I'll say in terms of sort of tips for excelling, focusing on the big picture is really hard. It's very easy, particularly early in your career, to get lost in the weeds on small questions. And the test that I like to think about is, can I get you interested in my topic by telling you one sentence about it? If I have to give you a 6-sentence setup to why the question's interesting, I've probably already lost the thread of what matters for education policy. I had a mentor who once described it as, can I very quickly get one of my parents to care about this thing? If so, then I'm barking up the right tree, right? Part of that is you need to take big swings. You need to aim at big questions. And the big questions are always harder to answer than the small questions, which means, as again, multiple people up here have said, most of the time you will fail. And so in order to succeed, you have to try a whole bunch of times. And if you want to do that before you're at the age of retirement, you have to learn to fail really fast. In other words, identify the way to figure out quickly whether your brilliant idea has any legs or not. And I can talk a little bit more about that if we have time, but swinging big and failing fast is pretty important. The last thing, people hear me complain all the time about the number of meetings that get put on our schedule. To do deep thought requires large blocks of uninterrupted time. And very few workplaces actually design employees' time that way. Managers have different incentives than the rest of the employees do, at least with respect to these kind of long-term projects. And so whatever you have to do in life, block off days where you refuse to take meetings with people, or you don't come to campus, or whatever it is, you have to alternate between having those blocks of uninterrupted time and talking to all these other human beings that are going to teach you stuff, and you have to move back and forth between those worlds in order to do it. A little bit of, how do you get to what are career pathways toward sort of impactful research? A really quick version of my life story. I was a physics major as an undergrad across the river at a university in the Boston area. I then but I got to the end of undergrad and I figured out that I actually didn't want to do physics anymore. I wasn't smart enough to be a theoretical physicist, and I wasn't good enough with my hands to work in a lab. And so I went to Cambridge University for a year, and I did a master's degree in a program called Politics, Democracy, and Education, where for the first time I had to read words and write words instead of just doing problem sets. I came back to the US and I taught. That third picture is Watertown High School here in Massachusetts. I was a public high school math teacher for a couple of years. At which point I realized, you know what, I want to somehow combine my interest in education and my love of math and sort of mathematical modeling of things. And so I emailed every economist at Harvard and MIT who had the word education in their research area interest, and a couple of future Nobel Prize winners tried to send me to a foreign country, but I was really interested in the US education policy. I ended up working as a research assistant at MIT for a healthcare economist. I got to take a free course because I was an employee. I took Josh Anger's econometrics course. That's where I learned really everything. Then I went off to do a PhD at Columbia. Then I got my first faculty job at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, a public policy school. Then when I didn't get tenure there, I moved to Brandeis's economics department for a year. And halfway through that year, BU came and said, we're going to make you an offer you can't refuse to be part of something really exciting between the ed school and the econ department. So I came to BU. But then 2 years in, I got an offer to go serve in the White House at the Council of Economic Advisors. And Dean Shard, much to his credit, said, even though you've only been here 2 years, that's really exciting. And God bless you. We love this opportunity. So I got to shake hands with President Biden before he jogged off to get on Marine One, the helicopter. Now I'm back at BU, and I might die here, and that's okay. I might spend the next 30 years of my life here, or who knows? It might be that I discover that at some point there's something else out there that excites me, either instead of or in combination with my life here. And so just wanted to point this all out to say paths can be really nonlinear. It took me a really long time to figure out what I wanted to do. My kids don't even know that I'm finished figuring out what I want to do. And so the last thing I'll say is, more broad lessons for thinking about pathways to expertise. I think of it as two buckets. One is education, right? If you want to do the kind of work that I do, getting a college degree with both quantitative and writing components to it, including particularly something like writing a senior thesis, is a really good way to start this path. You can do graduate programs that either compensate for stuff you missed in undergrad or that go deeper. We run one of those programs here. How many of you are in such a program right now? Yeah, so my great class is here tonight doing an MA in Education Policy Studies. We offer that here. If you're thinking about how to pick these kind of programs, you want to look for faculty who do the work that you sort of envision wanting to do later in your life. But the other thing that I think we undersell a little bit in this world, because we're in the education business, is that you learn a lot on the job, right? You learn a lot just by doing tasks, both about doing the tasks, how do you do them better? You also learn what kind of tasks you actually like to do. And in my world, there is great work that is done in academia. There's great work that's done in research firms like Mathematica and RAND. There's great work that comes out of government agencies, so school districts or state departments of education or the federal agencies that I've interacted with. And as I said, and actual school systems themselves sometimes produce really interesting research. And so I think I'll end on the note that I love the fact that we here at Wheelock are in the business of sort of generating these ideas, and educational settings are a great place to do that. But there are a lot of places our students can go in the world where you will continue to learn and grow and do that work. And I'm really excited that we're in a place to help make those connections. So I'll stop there.
This was truly wonderful. I enjoyed a lot. I hope you all as well. The good news is that we have time for conversation, about half an hour or so. And after, we have a wonderful reception. There is music, there is food, there is chocolate, there is dessert. So that to look forward as well. So we really try to put together, as you saw, right, the science of excellence, right? And that's why we had people from so different domains. We have two questions we want to ask, and then we want to open to the floor. The first question that I think, it cuts across is people go through transitions, economies go through cycles. Is there an advice that you would give, right? When you found yourself in a hard place, there is a life transition, or, you also find the literature as change events, right? There's a change that you usually don't anticipate. Is there any advice you would give so people stay in that path or change paths if that's a possibility?
I guess. Hello. Okay. I guess what I would say is be less stressed about those moments if you can. I came to the end of my time on the faculty at Harvard and realized they didn't want me around anymore, and it was really frustrating. I invested 10 years of my life there, and it sort of forced me to go look for jobs. And I think I ended up in a better place in the end, being forced to get out of what I thought was a comfortable, good option. I just didn't know there were better options out there. The other thing I'll say, because I'm an economist, so I have to say this, Steve Levitt, the author of Freakonomics, wrote a really interesting paper, I don't know, about 5 years ago, where he convinced a bunch of people who were facing major life decisions, whether to change jobs, whether to marry someone, whether to have a kid. He convinced them to flip a coin and do what the coin told them to do. And he found, obviously it's random, he found that basically the people who the coin said, do the thing that pushes you out of your current status quo, ended up happier as a result of that, just because the coin told them to do that. So I think we often overestimate how good our current situation is and underestimate the set of opportunities that are out there and that can make us happy.
Hello.
Okay, I can come from different angles. I think something, if we go to social support, finding your people, finding your niche, the people that really care about you, and that's super important for those transitions. And we can go for knowing your values, going back to your values. I think that's super important. And a personal example, in 2020 with the pandemic, a lot of teams fired people. I was one of them, and allowed me to reinvent myself. I went back I was living in Phoenix at the time, got my licensure for mental health, started working with the community, and then job opportunities came back. So similar to what you were saying, the opportunity to reinvent yourself and knowing that everything is going to be fine, right? I realized that my niche there was my wife and my parents and the few friends that really supported me through that process. And I think it's a combination, and my values, which is, my vision in life is trying to create a positive impact on the people I meet. And I think that was the driving force. And also, like, adversity is a good teaching moment, right? Like, failure is teaching. I have this conversation with players and coaches all the time. What did you learn when you fail? Like, take out the emotional component, as we've seen earlier in the sessions today. What did you learn today? How is this going to make you better? Growth, evolution.
So yeah, my life transition was actually coming out of college. I started my master's in saxophone at Boston Conservatory. And I also decided, you know what, I'm not ready to give up hockey. So I started at the same time coaching at Northeastern for 3 years. And it finally, so that was over my master's and then during my doctorate, or the first year of my doctorate. And then finally, it was just too much. And so for me, that was really hard. But what I decided was not what was going to make me happy in this moment, but what did I want to leave behind at the end of my life? So that for me was art. So that was music. The other thing that, and you'll, for the sports psychologists in the room, it is really hard when your career is dependent on the performance of other people. So that also was an easy way to move on from that. And then I do, deal with college students as an educator, and college students, yeah, they go through some change events, right? So for future educators out there, I would always just suggest to listen without judgment. If you can just sit there and listen and do your best not to react at all, then it lets the person say what they need to say in that moment.
So, thank you. So I'm gonna let you keep the microphone, Oscar, so I'm over here. So on that note, I am curious if you all can talk about how we can change systems and environments to promote well-being and excellence in the field.
Have fewer meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to keep beating this drum. And in all seriousness, I think there are some very simple things, I'm clearly thinking about my current experiences at Wheelock, but fewer meetings and a building that is physically conducive to people enjoying being there. Like there are basic conditions you can set up so that it sort of frees people not to waste their time on stuff you don't want them spending their time on. So I think there are conditions you can provide, and identifying those conditions is a valuable exercise.
I like that idea.
Well, the School of Music is an old car dealership. So, yeah, no. So, yeah, I mean, obviously facilities is always a big thing, but I think musicians and athletes have a similar focused train of thought just on the one task that they have in front of them. So I think for individuals, it's really good to try and change the mentality so that you can promote life balance. My best music students right now have random outside passions, basically. I have one student that was away last week because he is on an Olympic style, not Olympic, but Olympic style weightlifting team. I have another student that goes away every weekend to go rock climbing. I mean, there's other things, intramural sports, of course, and video gaming, antiquing. But what that does is that for individuals, that balance lets them come into their music with more energy and with more focus because they know that that's what they have to get done in that moment. So.
I think in professional baseball, these are individuals that have invested so much time. And I started in baseball back in 2015, and there were very few of us mental performance coaches. Every team is mandated to have an employee assistant program and a psychologist, but very few had mental performance coaches. Very few had life skills coaches and education coordinators. And I think it is very important that not only we develop elite baseball players, but also elite humans. I think that's super important, and it sounds cliche. It sounds like a marketing, but it is not. I've seen it. I've noticed that people who are able to grow outside, like finding hobbies and finding other strategies. And you see this a lot with those players that go through injuries, Tommy John, and shoulder issues, hand issues, whatever that is. And they rediscover themselves and they find different strategies to cope with such an adversity. So, and hopefully my goal is like, yeah, we make a major leaguer, awesome. And I've been lucky enough to be in the path of the journey of many of them, but it will make better human beings. Like, if they decide to go back to school when they never thought it was school, like some of these players get their master's degrees or they finish high school and then go to education. I think that's super important as well. And those systems are being created. I feel like every team has a different approach to it, but more of them, a lot of them overlay very, very frequently on developing human beings and elite baseball players.
One final question I think I would like to ask. When you think about thriving, right? What's one word that comes to mind? We talk about so many things, right? And we talk about thriving individuals, teams, and systems. What's the one or two things you would like to share that kind of symbolize thriving to each one of you?
I'm just balance.
Openness to exchange of ideas.
You gotta love what you do.